Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. Y'all need a new chair. It keeps on. We're at the phase in the chair where it keeps going low. You know, when you sit in your chair, you just go lower and lower. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning to our village keepers on YouTube. Good morning, YouTube. It's good to see y'all. Good morning, Veranda and Kanita. Cynthia, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning to our village keepers here on Facebook. Good morning, Reverend Dr. Marilyn. I'm trying to, I don't know how well my Spanish is going to be, but Feliz cumpleaños. Am I saying happy birthday in Spanish? I hope I am. That's what I'm trying to do. So happy birthday. Buenos dias to you as well. Good morning, Mia. Good morning, Deborah. Good morning, Dana. Good morning, Jessica, Antoinette, Yolanda, Candace, and Aisha. Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, y'all. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I just feel a little baptism. Good morning, Real Hope for Help. Good morning, Chauncey, Donnell. Good morning to everyone joining from YouTube and from Facebook. Good morning, Natasha. Good morning, Angie. Good morning, Angie. I see you had a grand time at the 71st Boule for the members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I am glad that all of you had a grand time. Ashe, what's up to the homiletical goat. He's so humble that he would not like me saying that, but I'm gonna shout him out and put him on blast anyway. The Reverend Dr. Reginald Wade Williams. Yeah, I know. People always post about your favorites. But this is a name that you will not likely see unless you have had him in a class, or unless you are his friend, unless he has blessed you. But Reginald Wade Williams is a homiletical genius. He preaches in the words of our dear brother, friend, and comrade, the Reverend Dr. Earl Fisher, with sermonic militancy. His breath, I just feel like celebrating you this morning, brother, if you'll let me. His breath, the breath, Breadth, the breadth of which he is able to view a text, his ability with quick reach to provide for you receipts, Ashe, on a particular text are unmatched. His latest book, which I was reading, so it's not down here in front of me. It's up probably by my bedside. Moving the Masses, on Black prophetic preaching. I know I'm using the book this semester for my Sacred Memory and Black prophetic preaching course. I encourage you all to purchase it. And listen, for me, for Melva, you know, I don't run with the pack. That's what I want to say. Not that the folk that the pack are elevating or do not deserve to be elevated, and they do. But I don't run with the pack. I run with the outliers, I say. I run with the people on the margins. That's who I run with. That's where my community lies. And so I'm telling you right here that this brother is, if you do not know him, you should. If you want to follow his ministry on the YouTube page of Amber, what's University, First Baptist Church, University Park. You know, I got some other folk who are outliers also. Shout out to the Reverend Dr. David Brawley and the St. Paul's Community Baptist Church there in East New York, Brooklyn. Shout out to Rise Community Church in Atlanta, Georgia. Shout out to The Gathering, a womanist church in Dallas, Texas. I am naming these particular ministries because they are not in the limelight. They do not receive popular faith media looks. They are not necessarily the ones who will get opportunities on huge national and even maybe international platforms, not because they are not qualified, called, or able to do so. It is often because for so many other reasons that just I don't feel like talking about this morning, because I want to leave it on the celebration side. And so, Reggie, I celebrate you this morning as my colleague in this work, as my comrade, as one that I can often call quickly to find a text, one whose hand is quick on the resources. And I want you to know that you are valued and that your ministry is necessary. I want you to know that I am speaking life to your spirit on this morning. Hallelujah. I want you to know, hallelujah, that I give thanks for the day that you responded on the other side of time. I give thanks that you said yes, that you chose the parents you chose, that your siblings chose the parents you've chosen. We know that you come from good stock, Ashe. And I just speak life into you. I speak to your body, Ashe. Hallelujah. I speak to the cells in your body. I speak to the blood that's running warm in your body. I speak to every part of your body and command that you will live, and you will live abundantly. I acknowledge you and I see you. I recognize your gift and I give you flowers, sir. Hallelujah. Yes, flowers, friend. Flowers, friend. Flowers, friend. Let me tell you, you absolutely need to plan a visit if you are in the Chicagoland area to go visit First Baptist Church in University Park, Illinois. Shout out to you, Reggie. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Hey, Dr. Jamie, how are you? Hey, Donna, how are you? Yes, yes, yes. It's important, y'all. Assalamu alaikum, my sister Zakia. Good to see you. Good to see you here. Good morning, Tawana. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Yeah, I just feel like popping off with the shout outs this morning. Ashe, my soul is happy. Amen. Yes, it is. It is. And so I just want to spread that. I want to shout those folk out. I want to shout you all out. Yes, yes. Shout out to Reverend Marilyn Pagan Banks, also in the Chicagoland area, doing phenomenal work. A pastor there who burst through the four walls of the church to respond to the needs of the community, because we are the church, Ashe, and we should never ever be bound or get comfortable within the four walls within the brick and mortar church. So for Reverend Dr. Marilyn, whose birthday was also yesterday, who is also out in those Chicago streets doing what needs to be done, we also salute you. And don't be upset, anyone, if I don't say your name, if I don't call on you. You know, don't do that. Don't do that. But good morning, good morning, good morning to the unsung. Good morning, good morning, good morning to the unsung, to the unsung. We see you. I'm telling you that I see you. Sometimes you just need a little push. Sometimes you just need a little encouragement. You need to know. You need to know. I love you, Reggie. He texted me now. I ain't gonna read y'all text, but just know I love you, friend. I love you. I love you hard and I love you long. My husband loves you. Our girls love you. We love you. Know we already clicked up with the fam. We love you, Ashe. We just, Ekaro, good morning to you, Jacqueline. I see you. I see you. Before I move any further, I just want to know you to know that you are seen. And folks might say, well, what does it bother whether you're seen or not? Well, if you just do it to the glory of God, all these churchisms that we have. But in just a little while, you're going to see why it matters that we have sight. And you're going to see the importance of our sight. And so having said that, good morning to all of you that are here viewing the Pink Robe Chronicles. I am Reverend Dr. Melva L. Sampson. I am the creator and the curator of this beautiful space, Ashe, and I welcome you. This is our own space where we have an opportunity to engage in wisdom bearing and truth telling. And then we leave from this place directly following this sort of public proclamation over to a private Zoom where we have an opportunity to talk back to the text in a space that we call The Clearing. The Clearing is a subscription community, which means it is behind a paywall. It is what I consider a very modest one, but nevertheless, for transparency, it is. And so if you have a desire to want to join with us on a weekly basis and you want to engage with us and talk back to the text of a community, about 40 or so people who come to the Clearing Live, and those a larger community who receive the recordings because they cannot watch it live. I am going to share with you then this link right here in the chat so that you can have the opportunity to join as you are able. And if you do join today before the end of this cast, just hit me at inbox and let me know that you've joined so that I can immediately email you the credentials to get over on to our Zoom. Good morning again. And by way, I just want to excuse me. I'm going to where I'm getting, but I just I hear the song in my head. I mean, it's just like a little hum and it's just so loud. This is the day that the Lord has made, that the Lord has made. I will rejoice, and be glad in it, and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will enter his courts with thanksgiving in my heart. I will enter his gates with praise. I will say this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. He has made me glad, oh, he has made me glad. And I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. Welcome into this place. I just feel it. Welcome into this broken vessel. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands and we lift our hearts as we offer up this praise unto your name. Come on, hum this with me one more time. Welcome into this place. Welcome into this broken vessel. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts, as we offer up this praise unto your name. As we offer up this praise unto your name. As we offer up this praise unto your name. Holy Spirit, I am the Lord. I can't remember the words to this. I'm gonna just hum till I get too far down now. Precious Jesus. I cannot remember. Hide my lips as my voice gives you praise. I am persuaded, Lord, to love you. I have been changed to bless your name. I am constrained by this great gospel, Lord, forever to worship thee. Lord, forever to worship thee. I am persuaded, Lord, mentions your name, and I am constrained by this great gospel forever to worship you. Hallelujah. I needed that. I haven't done that in a while. Ashe. I have not done that in a month of days. I could go on. I have not sat and just offered a praise from that space in a very, 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 very long time. I want us to have a conversation on this morning. A very familiar text, a familiar text here in the Pink Robe Chronicles and the Clearing. An extremely familiar text, one that I turn to often. And for those of you that are new in this space, you will know that we have no qualms with returning. As a matter of fact, I think that it is absolutely necessary that we return to text often. I actually think it is that our need to jump from space to space, or to jump from pace to pace, and even to want to always find something new and cutting edge is not necessarily an example of one who studies to show themselves approved, or one who is highly, super creative. I contend that it's a little arrogant. It is a little arrogant to believe that we can get something in one setting, Ashe, that we can unveil these truths in sacred texts and only need to do one drive-by, only need to unpack it once. And for those whom would criticize the notion that, we need something fresh and new and keep us on our toes, I want to invite us to pause for a moment and to consider the circularity needed to really move our faith beyond the horizon. That our faith does not grow, that our faith does not enhance, that our faith does not move, that our faith is not increased because we continue to hear something new and refreshing and exciting every single go round. I am suggesting that our faith is fortified often. That our faith is fortified often when we circle the biblical block, if you will. And that if those of us who are called into this work would tell the truth, we might admit that sometimes we move a little too fast. Sometimes it is not time for us to move from one particular offering, but we do so because we are concerned about the congregation. We do so because we are concerned about the listeners, and we are concerned about appeasing the listening ear, appeasing the palate, the spiritual palate, if you will, of those who congregate, of those who worship with us, of those who watch us. And so we fall into this trap of needing to create content. The trap that for those who are social media content creators, one of the things that you always hear is you got to stay creating something. You got to stay every day. You should be creating something. And with that comes a level of stress. A level of stress comes with this kind of constant creating that does not have within it a notion of rest. What I am offering today, again, those of you who know me well know exactly where I'm going. Because on last week we talked about collective courage. I had been considering. So how do you walk that out? How can we consider what does it look like? What does the operationalization, if collective courage, come on, social science researcher, if collective courage is the concept, how do you operationalize collective courage? As one versed a little in social science research methods, the concept is important. So we often have a concept, but we don't have a way to operationalize it. Operationalization, I'm going somewhere. Operationalization means, what does it look like on the ground? Operationalization is, how will someone know that this is collective courage? How will someone know that they are doing collective courage? These are questions that at least run around in my mind in the development of a sermon. And so I am back at, also, I should say that I had an opportunity to speak at the biennial, the pre-conference of the biennial, I'm probably saying this wrong, the biennial pre-conference and of the National Convocation of Disciples of Christ. I believe that's it. The biennial pre-conference of the National Convocation of the Disciples of Christ, which has historically been the meeting where the Black disciples of Christ engage prior to their national conversation. And the theme at this conversation was bridging the Bible, and and my task, along with Dr. Tomi Oredin, who is a phenomenal scholar and a gracious human being, was bridging the Bible with culture. Bridging the Bible with culture. And so as I was engaging in the conversation, some things came up for me to circle the block around, talking about how we're writing out this collective courage. And so I want us to go back to the book of Hebrews, which is what I brought up. And for those of you who are coming to the Black Theological Leadership Institute this week up in Princeton, it is possible, I don't yet know, but it is possible we may be coming from this text again, so I just want to put you on notice. It is possible. Hebrews chapter 11, verse 13, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. All these folks were still living by faith when they died, and they did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and they welcomed them from a distance. And I also want to offer another text.
I think it is so important for us to try to extricate ourselves from the idea that the measure of value is one human life, and that if it is not achieved in our lifetimes, it is not important. If people who were enslaved held those ideas, they would not have struggled so much. They were struggling for us. They were struggling for the possibility of a new world. If we imagine the ways in which people 100 years from now, 200 years from now, will be thankful to us for doing the work that we are doing today, then that means that we will have played a part in the production of that future, and that we will be spiritually present in that future. That to me means that our primary goals are to create new arenas for struggle, to guarantee that it continues from one generation to the next. I think it
Ashe, faith beyond the horizon. Faith beyond the horizon. I want to begin, before I even move into the text, so that you are clear on what my proposition is. That by viewing Hebrews through an Afrofuturist lens, we can see it as a text that encourages visionary thinking, that reframes historical narratives, and inspires hope for a better future. Or said this way, by embracing the spiritual vision of seeing from a distance described in Hebrews 11:13, we can understand Afrofuturism as a modern expression of faith that imagines and works toward a liberated future for Black people, embodying both biblical hope and the Sankofa principle of drawing on the past to create the future. So, for those of you who are new here, let's just go back a little bit and do a little recap of the book. This particular beginning with chapter 10, and probably between chapters 10 and 13, the writer of Hebrews is trying to encourage the listeners. The writer wants the listeners to return to community gatherings, and the listeners have not, they've stopped coming to community gatherings because it's possible, if with this modern eye, for us to suggest that life and times under the empire had grown very hard, that they are second, could even possibly be third generation believers. This is probably at least 20 years after the life of Jesus. So they would have heard the gospel by a follower of Jesus. They are not primary sources of receiving the gospel. And in this, in their enlightenment or endarkenment, in the words of Dr. Alton B. Pollard III, in their endarkenment, initially it was exciting. You know how when you have been conscientized, or your awareness of something has been increased, or you've received a new learning and you want to go tell everybody about it. You know how as soon as you find somebody who will listen, you begin to share and open up. I remember family members who became vegan, and my goodness, at every dinner, at every move, they were, selling us on veganism and why veganism was good and why it was necessary, and just the light in their eyes. And so they experienced this truth. They experienced and adopted this new way, and acknowledged that yes, it would come possibly or probably or absolutely with some consequences. Why? Because this belief is a minoritized belief. This particular way of being, and now this belief was not just for the people of Israel, but now this is for both Jew and Gentile, and it is minoritized. And so here they are engaged in this very minoritized thought process, way of being, way of moving and believing. And the empire doubled down on those who believed in this Jesus, those who were living an alternative way, an alternative lifestyle. Alternative meaning that they believed that the last would be first. Alternative in believing that there was a particular way that people should be treated, that they often challenged the empire system. And so as they continued were initially evangelized, if you will, they had no problems joining together. They had no problems protesting and organizing against the system. They had no problems pulling their resources together. They had no problem living in intentional communities. They had no problem worshiping together and being with one another. The text earlier in chapter 10 says that that they had no problem even being arrested. My goodness, that in the plundering of their material goods, that it was all right, because if they were in jail together, then they knew that the message that they were giving was far more important, and that together their perseverance would hold them. Some of them, however, there was too much distance between those memories and their present circumstance. For some of us who struggle, because folks often say, but can you trace the last time you saw God between the current time? For some of us, the distance is great. The distance is great between our sacred memory and our current circumstance. And for some of us, we have often considered what would it mean for us to just return from a level to return to a previous spot. Hey, Pastor Wright, to return to a previous to our previous knowledges, because this one is too heavy. Because when you are liberated, when you come into the light of liberation, there are some things, Pastor Christina, that are required of you. When you see the light, when you see it and you take it in and you know it, now you are responsible for that knowledge. Oh, but being responsible for that knowledge means that there are some consequences for going against the grain. There are some consequences for being an outlier. There are some consequences. There are some consequences for having the particular interpretive and critical eye that you have. There are some consequences for you not being in the center of the circle. There are some consequences for you critiquing the empire. There are some consequences for you critiquing the denominational structure and the standard and the processes. There are some consequences for you finding yourself, for you doing the work that your soul must have. There are some consequences. Yes, there is some weight that comes with being free. We think that being free just means you just out here. You just out here. But being free is heavy, friends. Being free is a weighty matter. And that weighty matter comes with a level of ridicule that sometimes can feel as if it's just about to break our backs. This is the state that the Hebrew people are in at the writing of this text. Some of them, the burden is just too heavy. The soldiers who represent the empire are pillaging their land. The soldiers who represent the empire are taking their family members, are sexually assaulting their daughters. They're losing their jobs. We don't have to look back, though, into first century Palestine, second century Palestine to understand this. When I think of this text, I often think of our freedom fighters, not only our civil rights fighters, but our freedom fighters in Black Panther Party, in Black Liberation Armies, because the civil rights freedom fighters, there's a kind of respectability. I've said this before. There's a kind of respectability that we attach to civil rights that doesn't get attached to those Pan-Africanists or those who were in the Black Panther parties or those who were in the Black Liberation Army, because we've allowed this nation state to designate them as domestic terrorists. And so because also the civil rights fighters and those who were fighting for civil and human rights were directly connected with houses of faith, it is often suggested that the more radical freedom fighters, that their fight was connected to a particular kind of politic. And when we are unsure of that politic, or when we have bought into the sauce, that folk who engage in that way are terrorists, then we put on our respectability lens. I just want to say that. And so when I think about these writers in Hebrews and what they what they may have had to endure because of their belief in Jesus, I think about, I'm just taking my time in this, so for those of you in the clearing, we probably not going to go over till 9:30. So, but since I got on here late, so I think about Fannie Lou Hamer, and I think about how her enlightenment that came, her endarkenment, her insightfulness, the insight that she received as a result of the student workers with SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, who enforced upon her and others their right to vote, that they had the right. And I think about knowing that she could lose everything because she was a sharecropper. She was living on land owned by someone else, knowing that she could possibly lose everything. She still attempted to vote. And that when she came back from registering, the person who owned the land that she sharecropped on, the land that the little piece of house that she was living in was on, demanded that she and her family leave the land. And not only that, but after she left the land and one of her family members or friends, community members, told her that she could come stay with them, that person's house was shot up. Fannie Lou Hamer could have said, "This is too much. This is more than I bargained for. This is way more than I desire to participate." But she didn't. But some of the folks of whom the writers are writing to decided that it was too much. And so they stopped gathering together. They stopped being seen in public and in private. They decided that they did not want the burden and or the weight that comes with being conscientized, that comes with being liberated. They decided that this type of freedom was way too heavy and that it was not worth it. So the writer is trying to encourage them. The writer is trying to tell them, listen, you cannot afford to stay. You cannot afford to withdraw from community. Also, I imagine that they were anxious. They were anxious possibly because the empire, someone somehow revealed to them the plot and the plans that the empire had for them as a minoritized faith, as a minoritized people believing in a minoritized savior. I'm imagining that the empire had a kind of plan and detailed those who supported the empire and the empire's ways of thinking. I imagine detailed this plan of all the ways that they were going to enforce these kinds of unscrupulous strategies and policies that would directly affect those who had come into the knowledge, those who had come into the way. And there was a particular group who was scared. They were anxious about this particular kind of proposition. They were anxious about the proposal and decided that it was too much. Nevertheless, it did not matter to them that they struggled together. It did not matter to them. For them, they were attempting to see the future, and their future looked bleak. Their future looked bleak. It didn't appear bright. They were anxious because if the empire would have its way, the empire in this text, that is, if it would have its way, then they thought it would be the end of them. And so rather than take further risk, they decided that the overwhelm was too much and they no longer wanted parts. And so now here are the writers, not just encouraging those who have walked away, but encouraging those who remain, who are trying to pick up the pieces, encouraging those who are saying, yeah, I know that I've stopped coming to assembly, but I got one foot in and I got one foot out. The writer is trying to say, remember those, remember those who persevered, and remember the time when you persevered. The writer wants them to enforce their faith and does so by saying to them that you don't come from folk who are lost and who shrink back, but you come from people who are saved. And we know, because we deal with this text before, that saved here is that you come from people who have been liberated from the fear of death. If Jesus is your example, this is just my stretch, right? If Jesus is your example, then you then come from one who, even at the the point of death, was liberated from the fear of that death. And hence salvation then in this vein means come what may, that if it is about being on the side of justice, then this is the side I'm going to be on. And even if death is imminent, if this is my vow, then this is my way. So the writer is saying that you come from a folk who are not scared, Ashe, and it is because of their faith that you are able to now, or it is because of their way that you are now able to understand that now faith then, right? You understand now that faith is the substance of things hoped for, and it is the evidence of what you cannot see. They are trying to gird, to support them, to root them, to move them beyond this infinitesimal size faith. And in this, the writer goes on in 11:2 to say, it is because of their faith that their ancestors, it is because of their faith that the ancestors received approval from God. But then 11 goes on through this hall of faith. It begins to tell you this hall of faith. And in this hall of faith, it begins to name all of the people who received the promise of God. This person received a promise. This person received a promise. Calling the people's ancestors, who would have been both their spiritual and their ethnic ancestors, letting them know, but listen, they persevered and they received a promise and they didn't get it, but they did not turn back. And that's the part where it gets a little cringy for me, because I'm always like, why does this show up here? Why did the people at the various creeds decide that this needed to be a part of canon? What about this particular text is affirming? Because I don't receive affirmation from telling me who received the promise, but they died and didn't get it. Because I want to receive it on this side, And then you get down after hearing all of the people who died in faith. It is captured in verse 13. All of these people were still living by faith when they died. All of these people were still living by faith when they died, and they did not receive the things that they promised. But here's the B clause that I want to focus on. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. They only saw the promises from a distance, and they welcomed them. Friends, I want to suggest that not only is there a plan, I want to say that I'm not sure if some of us will experience it. As a matter of fact, I'm absolutely 100% positive that some of us will transition from this life to the next without having seen on this side of time the plan. Our plan, without having fully received the promised, without having fully been able to have anything material. Yeah, this is 100% the case. And so it is required then for us to shift our lens, to adopt a way of thinking and being and viewing that has already always been inherent. Now, it took a particular scholar, a white one at that, to introduce to us who coined the term Afrofuturism in the mid-1990s, which was his way of talking about Black people's absence in speculative fiction. But Afrofuturism, then, for us is a way for us to engage, to converse, to talk about the very clear fact that there are Black people in the future. Afrofuturism is a cultural movement that merges science fiction, spirituality, and social justice, a movement that draws from the past and the present to imagine a hopeful future. In the article in the Gospel According to Afrofuturism that is offered to us by Reverend Heather Janules, she lifts up the work of Alicia Wormsley. Alicia is an artist from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, my hometown, and Alicia did an art installation saying that there are Black people in the future. Well, would you believe, I can believe, because I'm from this area, that people were so up in arms at this notion, calling her racist and individualist, that Black people, why, of course, Black people are in the future. But there was something deeper that Alicia was speaking to, that ultimately Alicia had to take down the installation. My goodness. But from this particular lens, what Alicia was speaking to, what Alicia was inviting us to consider, is drawing on this history of imagination and how we must imagine ourselves in the future, in a space, in an age where our bodies are challenged and often tossed and driven, as the hymn says. She wanted it to be known that Black folk are in the future. This Afrofuturist lens, then, I want to place in the forefront of us seeing the distance. That this biblical concept of seeing from a distance that we find in Hebrews 11:13, which describes this people of faith envisioning promises not yet fulfilled, is, I want to say, Afrofuturist. my. So what, Melva? Like, what's the point? Why do we need to know about Afrofuturism, and why do we need to use it as a lens? Well, because of its practice of imagining power, or of imagining or empowering futures for Black people. This parallels with the biblical vision. This parallels, as I believe the writers are envisioning a future for the believers. Now, this then invites us. It invites us. Well, let me stop. Come on in here, Reggie Williams. It was Reggie who gave to me this week an article by Jerome Ross. And in this article, Jerome Ross is placing in conversation the ancient Yahwists with African Americans. And what Jerome Ross is saying, that survival is at the core, right, of an interpretive lens for Black folk. Moreover, he is saying that what some of us need to be mindful of is that the text, the stories, the oral stories that become the written text, the text in and of itself, these stories were developed and passed on by an oppressed people, who lived under the rule of first the Egyptians, then the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Romans, the Greeks. And that under each of these regimes, we find stories of people who are living with the foot of an empirical system on its neck. And so what Jerome Ross wants us to know is that people of the African diaspora have something in common with the ancient Yahwists, and that is that we have been an oppressed people who witness, who understand God from an oppressed lens. Come on in here, James Cone. A God that is ontologically Black, a God that sits in the bottom with us, a God that operates from the bottom to the top, reversing those who believe that they shall be first, so that they suggesting that they will be last. And so Afrofuturism then gives to us two very important spiritual themes. One of those themes is time travel. Brother Dr. Herbert Marbury said it like this week. He said, Black people, this is my paraphrase, Black people are creative geniuses. And Black people need to retrieve the creative sacred genius of its sacred text. That Black people have always remixed the sacred text for our livelihood so that we might flourish. Black people, he suggested, have always been, my word here, time travelers. So this opportunity for us then in this text is to identify some of the congregants here, and even the writer. I'm placing Afrofuturism on top of this, absolutely. For the writer to say that they only saw them and welcomed them from a distance is to suggest that they engaged in time traveling. Yes, why then should we all become time travelers in this season? It is the same reason why our ancestors became time travelers in previous seasons. So what does this have to teach us? One teaches us, according to Reverend Heather, that when we face certain hopelessness, there are gifts from the past that help us conjure another world, that help us conjure a different outcome, that help us conjure a new way of being. Reverend Heather cites Walida Marsha, who writes this quote, whenever we try to envision a world without war, a world without violence, a world without prisons, a world without capitalism, we are engaging in speculative fiction. All organizing is science fiction. I want to tell you on this morning that we are all speculative fictionists, that we have to engage in time travel. And what we are seeing in this text is the ability for one to escape mentally and spiritually what they are currently experiencing, to be able to actually produce a future for those who have not even arrived yet. Let me run it back. What they are experiencing in this moment, in this text, that yes, they have received a promise. They received a promise, and we don't know. It's not a chronological promise. It's not like last week they received a promise. Some of them received a promise 30 years ago, 20 years ago. So we don't know when the promise was received, but the text says that they all still lived by faith, and they died and did not receive the promise, but yet they saw it in the distance and they welcomed it. So here they are, seeing it in a distance on their plane of consciousness, working to produce a future. This is what Mama Angela Davis was speaking to. She was saying the importance. Can you believe that the struggle that our ancestors were engaging in was so that we must produce a future? Can you believe that what they were doing? And this is why, in her mind, we cannot stop struggling for freedom and for liberation, because when we do so, we fail to produce a future. Producing a future requires us to time travel. Producing a future requires us not to see what's in front of us. Here comes that faith. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for. It is the evidence of things not seen. A time traveler is required to hold the evidence of what is not seen. Melva, what is the evidence of what is not seen? Friends, might I posit to you this morning that the evidence of what is not seen is your imagination. Yeah. That the evidence of what is not seen is imagination. And can I push? Imagination, actually, let me take this off for a second because there's a quote in this here book that I want to read to you. This book called Black Imagination, curated by Natasha Martin. It's called Black Imagination, curated by Natasha Martin. She says, in 2018, in order to make reparations to myself for my reparations project, I read only the words of Black women and savored the sticky stain left by my minds like N.K. Jemisin, Aniti Okorafor, and Tomi Adeyemi. For me, the joyful escape in this Black imagination was both profound and liberating. I suppose for someone else, it might be like suddenly becoming vegan, but instead of cutting out meat or dairy and animal products from my diet and feeling amazing, I was cutting out white supremacist ideation as filtered through what I was reading specifically, but also with an eye to all forms of popular media and visual exchange. Between this chasm and the now is a wide gulf of joy, and I am presently lying in the sunshine of a beach named Unbothered. I swam through a million emails to get here, my arms aching and muscles knotted, even in my sleep, but I got here, and here's how I did it. I joined forces with other Black women who already have too much to do. We planned an exhibition that would decenter whiteness and provide space for healing and validation. We agreed to collect sound from Black folks of all kinds, and craving nuance over stereotype, we sought out Black children, Black youth, LGBT plus Q folks, unsheltered Black folks, incarcerated Black folks, neurodivergent Black folks, as well as differently abled Black folks. Using field recorders, we spent months collecting responses to 3 prompts. What is your origin story? How do you heal yourself? Describe or imagine a world where you are loved, safe, and valued. In this question of imagination, I'm gonna come back. Just put your pen here with me right quick. In this answering this, describe or imagine a world where you are loved and safe and valued. Serenity Wise of Auckland, New Zealand said this: when I imagine a place where I feel safe, come on, see it in the distance. When I imagine a place where I feel safe and loved, it's completely unrealistic. So not really that relatable to this world. And the closest thing is when I'm at home alone in my kind of quiet space. Nobody knows that I'm taking the whole day to just sit in my pajamas and be myself. It's hard for me to imagine a realistic world as a human where I feel safe and loved, completely. It's always like a partial thing when you walk around the human world. But in my imagination, I am a water molecule and a river and an ocean. I'm heavy, and that feels like a safe space and a loving space because it's natural. And I think that it's natural to be in a space where you are safe and loved. It feels like that should be a natural experience. The evidence is our imagination. And our imagination is our technology. That this imagination to travel time can be, how do you travel time? Then our imagining and actually moving through history to connect with history through our ancestors, to bring the past forward is a technology. Seeing in the distance requires time travel. Time travel then affirms our imagination. Our imagination is the evidence of things unseen, and our imagination supports our faith. What are some other examples of time traveling? I'm thinking about Alice Walker's definition, her 4-point definition of the title of the book, y'all, is Black Imagination. Black Imagination by Natasha Martin. Black Imagination by Natasha Martin. In the four-part definition, she said, the young girl says, Mama, I'm walking to Canada and I'm taking a whole bunch of you with me. That is time traveling. Canada represents, during the enslavement period, Canada represents freedom. It is the space where if you escape there, you could be free, that you wouldn't have to worry about someone owning you or you being chattel property of another human being. In Canada, one's identity, one had the ability to form and shape their own identity. So to say that mama, a little girl saying to her mama, I'm walking to Canada, is a form of time traveling. Where are you walking to this morning? Another form of time travel is in the film Harriet. In the film Harriet, when Harriet has gone back to get her family, to get her brothers and her sisters, and her sister decides that she is unable to time travel. And friends, that's okay, because everybody is not going to be able to see it in the distance. But Harriet saw her sisters and her other siblings' freedom in the distance. And yet when they get to the banks where they have to now go into the water because there is no other way around but through, some of Harriet's siblings decide that they are unwilling, just like the people in Hebrews, that they cannot go further. They suggest that Harriet has brought them all the way here just to leave them. And they decide that they're going to turn around. They decide that they know what is best, that they know more than the one who has been making these trips, numerous amounts of trips to come and free people. So Harriet, to show them that God was always and would be on their side, Harriet takes her rifle, lifts her rifle before her head, and you remember it, Harriet begins to walk down into the water. As they looked on, Harriet, a short woman, begins to walk and the waters begin to get deep. It looks like she's going to lose her footing, and just as she begins to look like her chin was about to meet the water, as she holds the rifle above her head, she says out loud in the film adaptation, living waters flow through me. Living waters flow through me. Harriet had to see herself on dry land. Harriet had to see herself, even though as she is walking, she is steadily moving deeper and deeper, going further and further down. As she time traveled for just a moment, she saw herself acknowledging as a portal that the living waters flow through her. And wouldn't you know, the film suggests that shows us just as she takes that word, she begins to walk up on higher ground. Friends, I want to tell you that the Hebrew Bible today, the people in Hebrews today are pointing us to the importance of time traveling. They did not receive the promise in their lifetime, but they believed that maybe it would come in the distance, and that the work that they were doing, the faith that they had, would not be deterred, would not be diminished, because there was another generation coming behind them. See, our problem, saints, is that we keep only living for this generation. We're only living for ourselves. The beauty that the ancestors engaged was they lived for beyond themselves. And this is why faith beyond the horizon is important. You cannot get thrown off by what you see today. You can take it in and see it as data. You can do the necessary steps to educate yourself and to engage in your civic duty, to contribute to policymakers, to understand all that is at hand. But I implore you to know that you have the ability, just as Alicia Wormsley said, Black people are in the future. Now, it may not be me, my body particularly, but what I do know is those that come from my lineage will be in the future, because I see them in the distance. I see them in the distance. This is a frequent plot. I want to end with this. What is required to see something in the distance? So along now with this imagination, is memory. Whew. It is the memory of the promise. That's it. It's a hard one, y'all. What do you mean, Melva? I want to close in this way. I'm Generation X. Or post-soul generation. And I listen to the stories of baby boomers who carry those in the twilight. All of them died. Without receiving the full promise. But it is the memory for me. It is the memory of their stories, the memory of their actions, the memory of their belief and their faith that solidifies that's exactly what I'm saying, Terrace. That we navigate our futures through sacred memory. And that is what seeing it in the distance is. This is what it means to hold on. I'm finished. I grew up hearing my grandmother sing this song, and then I started singing it. I just want to give you the chorus. By and by, when the morning comes, when the saints of God are gathered home, we will tell the story, how we've overcome, and will understand it better by and by. Now, I know I've even been guilty of demonizing the by and by. Absolutely. But here, I want to retrieve its utility. I want to suggest that the by and by is a product, if we look at it, that we can, the by and by futures us. It is a vehicle for futuring ourselves. That when the morning MORNIG comes, and I want to add when the morning MOURNIG comes, when all of us are gathered, we will tell the story. When we are able to see it in the distance, it is our ability to tell the story, sacred memory. And we've retrieved the story because now our imagination is clear because it is the evidence of our faith. How we've overcome and will understand it better. Woo! I gotta go. Ultimately, what I hope that you've walked away with, or you've received this invitation, is to see Afrofuturism, which inherent within Afrofuturism is Afrocentricity. Afrocentricity given to us by Dr. Molefi Asante is the position that our lens begins with our culture and our history and our spiritual and traditional ideals. And that beginning from that is our critique against that which has deemed us not a people. We affirm ourselves by engaging in sacred memory. So we future ourselves by engaging sacred memory. That this in Hebrews 11:13, this kind of visionary faith described there, that while also recognizing its unique cultural significance in addressing historical injustices and imagining liberated futures, that this particular text frames the act of envisioning the future as both a spiritual practice and a form of cultural resistance and empowerment. The last point is this, that seeing it in the distance is a form of resistance against empire and empowerment for those who remain and for those who are on their way. That's it. That's the good news. The good news in the text is, that seeing it in the distance, this spiritual technology that is informed by our imagination, that requires us to rely on sacred memory, to future ourselves, to envision, to see it in the distance, is both a spiritual practice and a form of cultural resistance and empowerment. Friends, we cannot fully rely on human politics to move us to where we need to be. We need to couple our understanding of particular systems with our ability to time travel and to engage in a spiritual practice as such that is both a form of resistance and empowerment. For the people in this Hebrew text to say that they see it in the distance, it was a direct resistance from the empire, resisting their ways of knowing and being, resisting all of their cultural ethos, and deciding that the folk that they had called on, the folk who were called on in the hall of faith, that they too had received a promise, and to sit and to hold and to rely on that sacred memory to be able to produce a future was unlike anything the empire had ever engaged. They not like us. And moreover, we're not like them. Ashe, y'all. I'm headed over to the clearing. I appreciate you all for being present. I will not be on next week. I will not. I'm saying it out loud so that I'll stick to it. Because when I don't say it, I end up coming on. Even if I'm saying it, Derek. Even if I wake up, D. Do not let me get on Sunday. Even if I wake up and be like, okay, unless something happens that requires our need to gather and be, I will not be on. I'm taking a much needed break and a much needed celebratory time with the family. Shout outs of what you will hear though is baby girl's birthday is next week, is next Saturday. You know she gonna have me put her Cash App up and stuff, y'all. So I will do all of the things, but she's starting her celebration this weekend, just like a Cancer. She's starting her celebration today and tomorrow. I will see those of you all who will be up in at the BTLI. And then my family, as I said, will be hanging out together next weekend, celebrating the big 1-5 for Fee, or as she goes by, the Icon, celebrating the Icon's birthday, and just really, having some time together that we don't always have. And there is a strong and actually y'all, it's gonna be the next 2 weeks, Ashe, because right after that I'm headed to preach for my brother Hodari in Atlanta, so it will be the next 2 weeks, Ashe, and it's needed. Ashe, it is needed. It is absolutely, absolutely needed. And I'm making myself take it. I am trusting that all will be well. I'm relieving myself of that kind of syndrome. Well, I want the people to, I'm putting me first. Ashe, I am putting me and the need for just to fall back first. So, I'm headed over to the clearing